Bonjour everyone, welcome to another episode on the PHP client for Neo4j. So I wanted to share that image first because of the world situation in general, and even GitHub right now has some issues. So it's a fun day, it's a fun week, it's a fun year, it's a fun decade so far. But apart from that, before we dive into the application again with Ghlen, who is again our guest today and who is doing most of the work, I wanted to remind you of the great Graph Connect event. So the website has been updated now. You can already register if you want to. It will be in Austin, Texas from June 6th to June 8th. And you will be able to meet people in person. That sounds pretty wild, I know, but now, we are back to in-event persons in many places. So Graph Connect will be like that as well. So make sure to register as soon as you can, because I believe you will get cheaper tickets that way. And if you want to submit a talk, of course, you still have some time. I believe it closes at the end of the month. Actually, in a bit more than a week, my bad. It closes on March 25, so you should hurry if you have not submitted yet to the Graph Connect call for papers. There are many different categories on things you can talk about. Of course, it has to be related to Neo4j, but it could be about graph data science, algorithms, your own experience with using the product, etc., etc. Your imagination is the limit here, really. So you still have a bit more than a week, but you should hurry. The sooner you submit, the better. And that's all I had to share in the Neo4j world. So let me remind you a little bit on what we're trying to do here with Ghlen. So we're building this real-world I/O project, which is, more than a project. It's actually an initiative to gather, to collect different backends and frontends for the same, for the same business domain in a way. So this real-world I/O is actually a Medium.com clone. So Medium.com, if you don't know, is a blogging platform. So the backend and frontend is all about, having an application that allow users to create blogs, publish blogs, have readers comment on them or rate them, etc., etc. And for this mix and match of backends and frontends with different technologies to work seamlessly together, this initiative, this real-world repository, actually exposes a set of end-to-end tests. So they act as a contract, really, of what should happen between the client, so the front end and the back end. And so that's what Ghlen has been doing for the last 3 episodes, and will continue today with, of course, Neo4j as a database, PHP as the target programming language, and the PHP client that Ghlen maintains to talk to the Neo4j database. And so I believe that's all I had to present before, letting the actual work happen, which is not done by me. So it's up to you now, Ghlen.
All right, thank you. So good day, everyone. So just to recap, the last episode, we did some more tests and created some more endpoints. And I believe one of the issues was that the authorization didn't really integrate nicely with Laravel. So I just said, let's continue another route, and I'll check if I can fix it. So I fixed it. I did it correctly, I think, the first time, but what I forgot was that the configuration was cached, so it didn't react to the changes. So to recap what I did to integrate the authentication into the framework, I used the simplest method available, which is the Auth via request. And so the first parameter is the name of, what essentially becomes the authentication driver, which is GWT for JSON Web Token in this case. And then the actual, yes?
May I just interrupt you for a second? I believe I removed your screen sharing by mistake.
No
so
problem.
If you could add it again, and then I will allow your screen sharing.
I'll also take the moment to silence my phone because it's been going off like crazy. Let's go.
No worries.
So let's share the screen.
Yeah, I thought I removed mine, but I think I removed yours in the process.
No problem.
My bad.
So is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, we were using the Auth via request method to register a new authentication driver. It's like the simplest way to do it. It's only a closure. So it's a closure that receives the request, and then we can just use that to return the authenticated object. So in this case, we use the user model because it by default implements the authenticatable contract, but we could have used a custom object as well. So like I said, what we did here was we look in the header if there is an authorization header. If it's null, well, the user didn't try to log in, so we can just return null. But if it is, we can remove the bearer part, so we get the naked token, and then we just decode it with the GWT library. We get the actual token, and then we just put it as attributes in the user, and we return it. And then the only thing that I changed in the user was I overloaded the getAuth identifier method. So it just returns the email as an identifier because we didn't implement an actual ID in the database in this example, at least not yet. So that really changes because in the previous example, if you went to the Auth controller, I think, or user controller, I believe it's called. Yeah. So if you go to the user controller, previously we had to fetch from the request every time you wanted to get the user. We had to fetch the request, look at the authorization header, and wire it back. But now, because it's integrated in the framework, all we have to do is use the built-in auth method, and there we go. We can request the user. If it's null, the user isn't logged in. Otherwise, we get the user. So I changed in preparation the logic, I believe. Where do we use it? Here. For example, when we update the user, previously, as I said, we had to get it from the request, but now we just have it built in as the user is logged in. So I check if we are logged in. So authenticatable is null. Excuse me, I have to let someone in. 2 seconds.
No worries. So, in the meantime, if you joined, of course, I want to remind you that you can ask questions in the chat, and I'm of course monitoring that, and I will try my best to tell Ghlen when I see a relevant question, or if I can answer it directly, I will do this, of course. Okay, so now let's go back to the application.
Yes. So as I was explaining, if the user isn't logged in or the user that is logged in is different from the email that is being used, we will return a 401 status code, which means unauthenticated. And otherwise, we can just run the logic. Nothing really has changed here. So we just do our match and set. So that's basically it. And then to finalize it, as I said, it's in the app service provider. There is we have registered the driver here. So there is actually in the config folder, you have to change it there as well. There is an auth configuration file. And you can see here that in the API, I changed the driver to GWT. The reason it didn't work during the live stream was because the configuration was cached. But all you have to do to change that is to run php artisan config clear, and then it'll clear all the configuration if it was cached or not. So that's basically all I did to change it. So you can just run the tests, and they are working. So I thought today to continue is to automatically wire the author based on the authentication. So in the previous examples, we had let's take a look here. the article controller, we hard-coded the author, if I remember correctly. Or I don't think we even stored it. I think all we did was, we just, when we returned it, we just programmed it like this to return the author. So I think we will do this. So every time every time an article gets created, we automatically attach the author based on the authentication. And then we will also do the slugs. So those are two different things we will have to fix, because right now also the slugs will crash if we use them if we use the same title multiple times, they will have the same slug. So we will need to take care of that. So if there is a new article that's being created with the same title, it should automatically increment the slug by 1. And I think that will take us about an hour, to be honest. So let's take a look at the tests, because this time I didn't prepare them because I thought it would be interesting to do it together. We have the user test in here, and we can go to the article integration test right here. So we have it's essentially a story that you're building. So first we create an article, then we get the article, then we get multiple articles to see if that endpoints work. Then we try to change it. And now we will have to change it that every time when we build a request, the user gets attached as well. So first, before we get started, we have to create a user. So what we can do is essentially just use something like this. Since we're still working, we'll clean this up later, but what we can do is we can just start by copy pasting this one. So we have one in our database. Let's take a look. So we already had it here. So first we clean the database at the start of our story, then we create the user. We've already tested it in another test suite, so we can just use it like this. There we go. We've created our user. Yes. And then what we can do is store the token. So if we want to get a token, where is this logic? We created test login. Yep, we can use this logic down here. You can also use a before clause, but maybe I think this is cleaner. So we create a user, then we get the user. If you want to grab the token, it's here. Yeah. Like this. And then all we have to do is add a property, string token. Let's do it like this. And then let's depend on that one. Let's create user. And I think if we debug now, of course, it didn't perform any assertions. So we have to tell that to PHP unit. It does not perform assertions. And then there we go. And I think if we take a look right now, see the token has been added. So we can start using that. Yeah, because I'm using this We can stop it like that. So we have our user. And what we can do now is we can add the headers. Yep, we can add headers. And the next one, authorization self. Okay. So now our user should be logged in. Let's see if the tests still work and they don't crash. Yeah, they still work. So let's go back to the create article and to the article controller. So now we have our user available. So what we can do is say the email is equal to auth user get auth identifier. And of course, yeah, we can use optional here to make sure our editor doesn't complain. So we have the email. We can double check it once more. Let's debug. There we go. The email is there, bob.ross@gmail.com. So now all we have to do is we have to attach the user to it. So what we can do is we can match a user with an email because it should be stored in there. Yeah, we can take a look to make sure if it's available as well. So let's go localhost 7474. Let's take a look in the browser. The user should be there. Yep, it's there. And if we take a look, so the email is an attribute. So we can match it. And we create the article. And then we create the relationship. Let's call it authored. The user authored the article. And I think this should work. I don't know by heart if you can use two creates after one after another, or if you have to use. Yeah. So I didn't attach the email. So article. So we've attached it there as well. Let's rename this to params. So it's a little bit more clear. Let's run it again. So that worked. So we can take another look. Match X. Return X. Yeah, so we have our article, which has been authored by Bob Ross, and it has two tags. So that looks like it works. And now what we have to do, of course, is if we get the article, we need to load the correct author, because right now we've hard-coded it. So we grab the tags. So we can grab the user as well. Authored. Let's take a look if we can author. I'm not sure if we can do this. This is interesting. If we can just put the node in there, or if it's going to start complaining. And then, of course, you have the decorate article part. This. So the following part will still need to add, but the author is there already. So the username should be in there, the bio, the image. So all we have to do is add following, because we haven't implemented it yet. We can just do it like that. So the tests don't break. Of course they will break, but this is a good first try. I think we can run it, see what happens. Of course it crashes. Variable u not defined. Of course it's not defined. I don't think we even, do we need to do the, yeah, we need to do the width. Yeah, okay. And the next one. Yeah, so we just return it as a node and then it starts to complain because we tried to, yeah. Okay. So what happened is this is actually a node. So we can just directly change it to a node, but what we can do is so when we decorate the article, author, get the properties of the node and then pass it to an array, and then Auth 5, I believe. So we can debug it to show exactly what's going on. Right here in this to be returned, see the author is on node because it gets mapped correctly. So we can call the get properties on there. So if we do it like this, to be returned author get properties. To array, we see the image, the bio, stuff like that. Of course, we didn't add the correct bio and stuff, so it's not going to be a correct comparison. But if we do it like this, yeah, of course it adds the password hash. That's not a good idea. That's not a good idea at all. So what we should do instead is, instead of like purely returning the node with the hash in there, what we can do, test create article, test get article. And here we go. Instead of just putting the author in there, we can hard code what we want to return in here. So we want to return the email. We want to return the I don't know by heart what we need to return. So let's take a look. Image following bio username. So I'm just going to copy paste this because otherwise I will forget. So we have email, username, bio, and image. And we can just say here following false. So now this will return a map. So if we go back here, let's take a look, let's debug it. We returned author. So that's indeed a cipher map. It gets image following bio. So it's all in there. Let's go. And now, of course, it doesn't match the bio. And that is because when we created the user, it didn't add a bio. So I don't know if the endpoint told us that we could already set the bio when we created a user. So I have the API open here. If we do a post users, see, it only allows us to do username, email, password. So we need to use the put to attach the bio and image and stuff like that. So let's go back to the user test where we have the test put user. There we go. And we can use that one. So we copy paste this in here. It should work out. Yep, there we go. And if we take a look, and here, yeah, so it has like everything we needed. That's great. So when we do the article, so essentially we've already done the first part of what we tried to do. So we automatically attached the user when we created an article. So let's take another look at the endpoint, because I don't know if you're also supposed to use this when we get like an article feed. Yeah, so the author and stuff like that needs to be attached there as well. So let's take a look at the problem. Article controller. At the article. Edit article. Did we already implement the feed? I think so. Yeah. So what we have to do here is, how much different are these? They look the same. So the optional match. These queries are exactly the same, with the only difference being the slug part here. Let's keep it simple and also still leave it like this. So all we need to do is attach this. Let's run all the tests, see if it works. So the get articles didn't work because, of course, we forgot to take the user with us. Yes, that one worked as well. So that went pretty smoothly. So we might be done a lot faster than I imagined. So we might be able to do some more work afterwards. But this is really the basic stuff. Now what we have to do is the slugs. The slugs, like I said, if we create an article right now, it will create the same slug every time, and that isn't advisable, of course, because yeah, it's the slug needs to be unique for every article. but that doesn't mean they can't have the same title. So we need to, before when we generate the slug, we cannot just simply use the slug helper, but we need to use that one to see if it already exists in the database. And if it does, we need to attach either a digit, so a -1, for example, or increment it. So if that isn't really clear, let's say we have an article named test article. If you want to generate a slug that's nice to read in the URL, our first instinct would be to just say, okay, let's, like we did here, let's create a slug from it. But if we want to, if someone else creates another test article, it needs to be a different slug. So what we do usually is we attach a -1. So this is a different case. And there is a first case where there isn't a slug like it, so we can just use it. And then there is a second case where it already exists. So we need to attach a digit. And then there is a third case, which is where it already exists one with a number. So we need to increment it, because otherwise what we would do is we would have like a next one would be -1, -1, -1. It doesn't work like that. So if it already has a -1, we increment that number. And of course, it shouldn't matter if it's a digit with one number or 100 numbers or whatever. It needs to continue working. So when I look at the problem like this, the first thing I think about is regular expressions. So what I see here is we get a slug. We can generate it based on the title. It'll always, if it's the same title, it'll always be the same slug. And all we have to do is check if it exists with a digit or without a digit, or it doesn't exist. So luckily, Neo4j has regex built in. So I think the form would be the actual slug. And then we need an optional part, which is one or more digits. We will have to check if this is the correct regex. I am not very sure. So to make sure, let's open something like regexer. If we paste this in, we need to create a regex based on the generated slug, which is in this case test article. And then we want to match the dash part as well. So if we do it like this, dash a digit, it can be one or more, and it can be optional. So yeah, that looks right. We have our slug. So I think it would be easiest if we immediately create an object in here, because otherwise it's going to get messy. So let's create a slug generator. Slug generator will own a session. And then it has a method public function generate slug string. So let's say it needs a label to identify the node, and it needs a string to build the slug. What we can do is session run, so we can if I remember correctly, a label cannot be a parameter. So we need to use string interpolation to build the label. So usually you will see me doing this, because if you do this, if you use a $sign, it'll only be used by Cypher and it won't like interpolate a string. So, but now we actually want this behavior. So we do it like this. We match a node with the given label, and the label will be immediately put in there. And then we do where, for example, node.slug equals the slug, and this one we want to interpolate, so we escape it. Let's just call it a regex. Let's do it like this. Order by we are only interested in the highest one that is matched, so we order it by node.slug descending. So we return order by slug descending, and we limit it by 1. And then, of course, we need to add the regex parameter in there. And then all we have to do is string slug string and attach the this part. And why is it yelling at me? I imported the wrong string. Yeah. So if this makes sense, we set the label in the match requirement. We look at the slug if it matches the given regex. If it does, we return the slug. We order them in descending order, so we get the highest one. And we limit it by 1, which means we will only get the highest match we can get. Let's get the result. So if you want to get, so there are, as I said, there were 3 cases. There is a case where it doesn't exist yet. There is a case where it exists but without a digit, and then there is a case where it exists without a digit, and then there is a case where it exists with a digit. So the first case is simple. If the result is empty, we return. Let's extract it. We return the slug. Then the second case is, let's do something fancy. Let's do a string replace. We will search for the slug. We will replace it with an empty string. Then we get the regex. That's also extracted. If this equals an empty string, yeah, now I'm going a bit overboard. I don't need the regex. What we need is the actual result. So existing slug equals result, get a cipher map, get a string. So the existing slug, and so what we do here is we take the original slug, we replace it by an empty string from the existing slug. And if that one is an empty string, that means there weren't any digits attached. in which case, because there weren't any attached, we can just return the slug with a -1. Yep. And then we have our final case, which is when there are digits attached, we can use the funky explode method for the existing slug. So let's call it parts. So the separator comes first, then the string. So we have parts of all the dashes. The final dash will be the one with numbers. So what we can do is the number is equal to parts, the count of parts minus 1. Yeah, that should work. So we've got our number, and then all we have to do is cast that to an integer. We need to increase the number, and then we need to return slug dash. So there we have our 3 cases. Like I said, if there isn't any result in the database, that means the slug didn't exist yet, so we can just return the slug. If there exists a slug, there are 2 other possibilities. One is there only existed one of the slugs, which means no digit has been generated, so we can just return the first digit 1. Or there already exists slugs with digits, in which case we increment the highest number and return it in a new combination. Yeah, so that's our slug generator. So let's get the time. Yeah, makes sense. So what we can do is we can go back to the article controller. We can have the slug generator in there. And then we have our string slug. This is now this slug generator, generate slug. So we generate it based on the label. The label is article. And then we have, what's title? It will probably was title. Yeah. Let's see if we broke anything. We probably did. No, we didn't. So, of course, this isn't any guarantee that it works. All we have done is we've guaranteed that the first case works, which is when there is no match. So let's go back to our article integration test. We have our test create article. Let's now do a public function test multiple creations. Okay, so we've tested a deletion. So now test get deleted. Let's do a test get. No, we don't do a test get create, because in that case, let's get article, test create article. This one is what we need. Let's extract that method and call it create article. Let's create article. Let's do it like that. So now we can reuse this method. Let's clean up the codes, return it immediately. Yeah, I think what we can do now is let's just call it 3 times or 4 times, so we get all the cases. This creates test article 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we've created 5. All we have to do now is assert equals. So our slug should be test article. Then we should get test article 1, test article 2, test article 3, test article 4. Yes. Yeah. And we have response 1 gets I forget what I think it's just JSON. We had a way of doing this, but let's keep it simple. Article.slug. Yes. Okay, let's do it like that. And then this one is 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if this one worked. So yeah, so it tests if it gets deleted, we get the entire story, and then we attach test multiple, we do multiple creations to see if the slug correctly increments. Okay, it does. So this is actually a lot faster than I thought it would go. So we've generated the slugs. So that appears to work. We can add another test afterwards to see if it doesn't like pollute it with another case. So bear in mind, these are integration tests. It's not the same as unit tests where we want to check everything. This is every edge case, but because we have some more time, let's do just an entirely different article just to see if it also correctly generates a slug. Test, create other article. So title, test article, description. Let's just do a single tag and then new article, other description. Slug gets generated correctly. And then what it should become is a new article. So okay. And if we run it in its entirety, great. Let's take another look at our endpoint, see if there is something else, or maybe oh, it looks pretty decent. So we've done quite a bit of the article endpoint. If we take a look here, we have the feed, get, put, delete. It's all been implemented. I think the feed we didn't because we have the following part. I'm not really sure if we need to go over this all in a live stream because it's essentially the same as we've done right now with the author. Might be more interesting for the next one if I use this same pattern, create a feed, and then look at the spaghetti code it becomes and try to organize the code a little bit better. Because I'm more of a big fan of getting it to work first and then cleaning up afterwards, instead of like starting with a clean design from the first time, because I feel like that's usually a fairy tale. It never really happens. So yeah, I think all the other ones, the favorite endpoints and stuff like that, yeah, we know how to do this because we have the user login. We already saw how we attach the user to an article. So now we can, so if you do the favorite, it's basically the same thing. Comments as well. I see the comments aren't really, I think it would be best for our next live stream to where I basically like fill it all out, and then we go and see basically how it became too complex. So we start to narrow it down, create some more unit tests. We also need to do validation still, and then we can start attaching a front end, basically a pre-built one, to see if we correctly implemented it. But I think we did, to be honest. And then we are working hard behind the scenes to get an integration with Eloquent. So hopefully afterwards we have built a first version of the Eloquent library, a new version of the Neo Eloquent library. And then we can start using existing packages in Laravel to do a lot of the heavy work for us. So we can start migrating to a solution with a lot less code. So that should be very interesting as well. But I don't think it will be useful to spend the next 10 minutes trying to build something else, because it's all been seen, to be honest, and we don't have time to fully implement it. So yeah, I think that would be the best would be our best bet. Do we have pagination? Let's take a look, because that's so next one we can, I think that will be the best bet. So next stream we will do all the basic stuff, like connecting profiles, connecting comments, stuff like that. I will prepare it beforehand. Then we will clean up during the live stream the more complex parts of the code, and we can start implementing pagination, because that one is also really interesting, in my opinion, to get that working. And then the live stream after that, we can start hopefully start implementing Neo Eloquent, and then I think we have our working backend. It was really not that difficult, to be honest, in my opinion. I don't know if there are a lot of people watching at the moment. If some people have questions, I'd be glad to hear them.
So far, I've not seen any question. No, so I guess people are just shy. So let me stop the screen sharing before your computer explodes. Okay, thanks. So next session, next episode will be in 3 weeks from now, right? Not in 2 weeks. I will try to create the meetup page a bit more, with a bit more notice than usual, so people have time to subscribe, register, and then not miss the event. And my webcam is getting all blurry on me for some reason. Anyway, thanks again for the great episode. See you then in 3 weeks, not in 2 weeks. And yeah, that's all I have really. So yeah, have a good rest of your day, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.